In this video, we're going to discuss solving by factoring. So we're going to be solving some equations, mostly quadratic equations, but this can work for other equations as well. So we're going to start with the basis of this is the zero factor rule, or sometimes called the zero product rule. And it says that if you have A times B equals 0, okay, so if you have a product and it's equal to 0, then the solutions are A equals 0 and B equals 0. Okay, so something times something equals 0. One of them has to be 0. And if you're looking for solutions, either of them can be equal to 0. Those will both give you solutions. Now, if you think about this, this is something special for 0 because it's not true for any other number. If you have A times B equals 6, that doesn't mean that one of them has to be 6. It's only true for 0. Okay, so when we're looking to factor, we need to have something times something equals 0. The 0 part of that's very important. So for example, let's say we have x squared minus x is equal to 20. Okay, now it might be tempting right here to factor an x out, but then we'd be factored equal to 20, and that doesn't tell us anything. We've got to be factored equal to 0. So the first thing we're going to do is move everything to one side. We're going to have x squared minus x minus 20 equals 0. Then we're going to remember our factoring rule. So we've got a 1 out front. So this is like the reverse of FOIL. So looking for factors of 20, that would give us -1, 5, and 4 should do the trick. So x minus 5, x plus 4. Okay, so you're going to make sure that you factor that. Double check your numbers before you move on just in case. So they multiply to be -20 and they add to be -1. Okay, so remember those factoring rules and double check your signs before you move on to the next step. All right. Now we have something times something equals 0. So that means that x minus 5 equals 0 gives us one solution, and x plus 4 equals 0 gives us another solution. So each factor gives us a solution, but they have to be factors. Something times something equals 0. So now we have something that we can solve. All right, so I want to get x by itself. I'm going to do the opposite. And then here I'm going to do the opposite and -4, and I get -4. Okay, so I get x equals 5 and x equals -4. If you come back up to the original equation, you can always check these. Okay, so for example, if I plug in 5, I would get 5 squared minus 5 equals 20. That would be 25 minus 5 equals 20, and that's definitely true. And then if I check -4, -4 squared minus 4 equals 20. -4 squared minus -4 equals 20. There we go. Okay, so -4 squared would be +16. Negative is the same as plus. So now we've got 16 plus 4 equals 20, and that is true as well. Okay, so you should be able to take those answers and check them back in the original equation also. All right, let's try another one. Okay, so let's do x times x minus 3 equals 18. Okay, so we've got something times something, but it's not equal to 0. All right, so we need something times something equals 0. So that means we're going to have to multiply this out and move everything to one side. So we've got x squared minus 3x when we distribute. And then I need to get everything on one side. So I'm going to subtract 18. Okay, now I'm looking for factors of 18 that would give me 3. So 6 and 3 should work. 6 times 3 is 18. 6 minus 3 is 3. So we want -6 and +3. So let's double check that. They multiply to be -18 and they add to be -3. Okay, so those are the right factors. Now I've got something times something equals 0, and I can break this up. X minus 6 equals 0, and x plus 3 equals 0, and I can solve for x. So I'm going to get x is equal to 6, and I'm going to get x is equal to -3. And again, you can check both of those in the original equation. Okay, let's try one more. Sometimes we're working out problems and we end up with something that looks like this. Okay, again, it looks like it's factored, but it's not factored equal to 0. Okay, so we need factored equal to 0. So we need to get everything on one side. That means we're going to have to FOIL the left-hand side. So we're going to get x squared minus 2x plus x minus 2. And then we can regroup. So we're going to have x squared minus x minus 2 equals 4. Now we want to get everything on one side. So we've got x squared minus x minus 6 equals 0. Okay, so now we've got everything on one side. We've combined like terms. We've got 0 on the other side. So now we're in good shape. Now we want to factor. So we're looking for factors of 6. That would give us negative 1. So x minus 3x plus 2 should work. Okay, negative 3 times 2 is negative 6, and negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1. Now we've got something times something equals 0, so we can break this up. X minus 3 equals 0, x plus 2 equals 0, and we know how to solve this. So we want to get x by itself, so we do the opposite. And we get x equals 3, and we get x equals negative 2. Okay, so for all of these, we're moving it to one side, and then we're looking to factor. Now, all of these were basic trinomial factors because that's very common, but remember, you're also going to look for common factors first, and you're going to look for trinomials with something other than 1 out front where you would use the AC method. All right, let's do one more. We're going to tie this into what we did earlier. All right, let's say that we've got one with fractions. So let's say we've got x squared over 18 minus x over 6 equals 5 over 9. Okay, so again, it's a quadratic. We see the x squared here, right? We're going to want to factor, but the problem is these fractions make it difficult. So if you remember back to earlier videos, in order to solve equations with fractions, we want to clear the fraction. Okay, we want to get rid of all of these fractions, and that should make it easier to solve. So we want to multiply by the LCD. So we're going to multiply the entire equation by the LCD. 18, 6, and 9 all go into 18. So let's multiply everything by 18. Okay, so we're going to take every fraction and we're going to multiply by 18. Okay, so this is like 18 over 1. You can write it that way if you want. The 18's on top, these numbers are on the bottom. So here the 18's will cancel, and I'm left with x squared. Here 6 and 18, 6 goes into 18, and I'm left with a 3, so that's minus 3x. And then 9 goes into 18, and I'm left with 2. 5 times 2 is 10. Okay, so now we've got something that looks like what we were working with before. We want to move everything to one side. Okay, so now we can factor. We're looking for factors of 10. That would give us 3. So 5 and 2 should do the trick. So let's do x minus 5, x plus 2, and check. Negative 5 times 2 would be negative 10. Negative 5 plus 2 would be negative 3. So we've got the right factors. We've got something times something equals 0, so we can break this up. X minus 5 equals 0. X plus 2 equals 0. And I'm running out of space here. I'm going to let me pull this up over here. Okay, so I added 5 to each side, and I got x equals 5. And then my other one was x plus 2 equals 0. So I'm going to do the opposite, which is subtract 2, and I get negative 2. Okay, so those are the two solutions, and again, you can come back up to the original equation and check them.